Millions of people lace up a pair of sneakers with 3 stripes without a second thought. The logo appears on stadiums, city streets, fashion runways, and living room floors across the world. It signals speed, status, belonging. Yet, the company behind those stripes was born from a brotherhood that collapsed into open hostility. A small Bavarian town that divided itself along a river, and a wartime chapter most consumers never hear about. What began as 2 brothers making shoes in their mother's laundry room became one of the most successful and most acrimonious stories in modern business. The same hands that once supplied athletes for the Nazi regime's Olympic spectacle later built rival empires that still compete today. The public sees global brands. The records show ambition, suspicion, mutual accusations, and a family that never reconciled. In the early 1920s, in the quiet Franconian town of Herzogenaurach, a young man named Adolf Dassler, everyone called him Adi, returned from the First World War and began experimenting with sports shoes in the family's laundry room. The town had a long tradition of shoemaking. Adi's father worked in a local factory. His mother ran a laundry business. Electricity in the post-war years was unreliable, so early machines were sometimes powered by a bicycle pedaled by the first employee. Materials were scarce. Money was scarce. Germany itself was struggling under the weight of defeat, inflation, and political instability. Adi was not a trained industrialist. He was a former baker's apprentice who had discovered a talent for craft and a stubborn belief that athletic performance could be improved by better footwear. His older brother, Rudolf, more outgoing and commercially minded, soon joined him. In 1924, they formally registered Gebrüder Dassler Schuhfabrik, the Dassler brothers' shoe factory. Adi focused on design and craftsmanship, spending long hours refining spiked track shoes and football boots that stood out for their light weight and grip. Rudolf handled sales, traveling to meet coaches and athletes, building the relationships that would later prove decisive. The division of labor suited their temperaments. For a time, it worked. By the early 1930s, the small company was growing. Then the political landscape of Germany shifted dramatically. On 1st May 1933, months after Adolf Hitler became chancellor, both brothers joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Historical accounts indicate this was common among German businessmen who wanted to keep operating under the new regime. Rudolf is generally described as the more ideologically aligned of the two. Adi appears to have prioritized the factory and athletes over politics. Both used the required Heil Hitler closing in correspondence and held membership in related organizations such as the National Socialist Motor Corps. The company benefited from the regime's emphasis on physical fitness and sport. Youth organizations needed equipment. Athletic clubs expanded. Sales rose. The 1936 Berlin Olympics became a defining moment. Adi traveled to the games and persuaded the American sprinter Jesse Owens to wear Dassler spikes. Owens won 4 gold medals in front of a crowd that included Nazi leadership. The publicity transformed the company's reputation overnight. Orders increased. By the late 1930s, the brothers were producing hundreds of thousands of pairs a year. Success, however, did not ease the growing personal friction. Rudolf later wrote that relations with his brother had been ideal until around 1933, when Adi's young wife, Kathy, began involving herself in business matters. Living arrangements did not help. The extended family shared a villa, and the wives clashed. Personality differences that once complemented each other began to grate. Adi was the quiet tinkerer. Rudolf was the salesman who enjoyed the spotlight. Under pressure, those differences hardened. Then came the war. Civilian shoe production was eventually ordered to stop. The factory was converted to manufacture components for the Panzerschreck, a shoulder-fired anti-tank weapon capable of destroying Allied armor. Rudolf was drafted into military service. Adi received a deferment to keep the plant running. Rudolf later claimed his brother had arranged or welcomed the conscription so he could control the business alone. Whether that claim was true has never been conclusively proven, but the belief took root. When Rudolf returned near the end of the war, trust had evaporated. One frequently repeated story, never fully verified, centers on an Allied air raid. As families crowded into a shelter, a remark about the dirty bastards returning was allegedly misinterpreted as directed at the other brother rather than the bombers. Whether the incident happened exactly as later told, it became part of the family's bitter lore and was repeated for decades. After the German surrender, both brothers faced denazification proceedings under the Allied occupation. Rudolf was arrested by American forces on suspicion of deeper involvement, including possible ties to security services. He spent time in internment and blamed Adi for the denunciation. Adi faced his own scrutiny for wartime production and party membership. Both ultimately received classifications as followers rather than major offenders, allowing them to resume business activity. Mutual accusations during the hearings only deepened the rupture. By 1948, the partnership was finished. The company was divided. Employees chose sides. Rudolf crossed the Auerock River that runs through Herzogenaurach and established what became Puma, initially registered under a name derived from his own. Adi stayed with the original site and on 18 August 1949 registered Adidas, a contraction of his own name, with 47 employees. He soon protected the three-stripe design that would become iconic. The town itself split. For decades, residents identified as either Adidas or Puma families. Marriages across the divide were rare. Bars, shops, and even social clubs reflected the loyalty. Children grew up knowing which side of the river their family belonged to. The rivalry was personal, commercial, and cultural. And if you think the story ends with two successful companies quietly competing, stay with me, because the consequences of that split shaped not only the sportswear industry, but the very idea of athletic branding for the rest of the 20th century. Adi continued refining shoes with an almost obsessive focus on performance. He experimented with materials, sole designs, and fit in ways that felt closer to engineering than traditional shoemaking. In 1954, the West German national football team won the World Cup in Bern, Switzerland, wearing Adidas boots with innovative screw-in studs that could be adjusted for pitch conditions. The miracle of Bern turned the three stripes into a national and then international symbol. Suddenly, the brand that had emerged from a divided family and a wartime factory stood for German recovery and sporting excellence. Rudolf, for his part, built Puma into a formidable rival through aggressive marketing and athlete relationships. The brothers never reconciled. They died still estranged. Rudolf in 1974, Adi in 1978. Their companies remained headquartered on opposite sides of the same small town, competing for athletes, markets, and cultural dominance. The human cost is harder to quantify. A family business that began in a laundry room became two global giants whose founders could not sit in the same room. The wartime choices, party membership, weapons production, mutual suspicion under occupation, left a permanent stain that both companies have largely preferred to leave in the past. Modern Adidas and Puma acknowledge the early history in limited ways, while emphasizing innovation and sport. Independent historians and journalists have filled in the gaps with archival records, denazification files, and interviews with descendants. The exact trigger of the final break remains debated. Wives, wartime decisions, jealousy, personality clashes, or a combination of all of them. What is not debated is the outcome. In Herzogenaurach, the river still separates the two former factories. For years, it was said that the town's residents would not cross to the other side for anything less than necessity. Loyalty was inherited. Conversations about the brothers remained careful. The commercial success of both companies eventually softened some of the edges, but the memory of the feud never fully disappeared. Descendants have spoken in later decades of the lasting emotional distance. Business historians have pointed to the story as a case study in how personal conflict can both destroy and create value. Without the split, there might never have been two competing global brands pushing each other forward. With the split, a family was permanently fractured. Today, the three stripes appear on the feet of elite athletes and casual wearers alike. The brand that emerged from a divided family and a divided town is one of the most recognizable commercial symbols on the planet. Yet every pair still carries the invisible weight of that origin. The laundry room workshop is long gone. The river still flows through Herzogenaurach, and the rivalry that once split households continues in more polished corporate form on the global stage. The next time you see those three stripes, you are looking at more than a logo. You are looking at the permanent record of two brothers who built something extraordinary and then destroyed the partnership that made it possible. The shoes succeeded, the family did not. Ambition created an industry. Suspicion ensured that the men who started it would never share the victory. If this changed how you see a brand you thought you knew, consider subscribing for more hidden histories behind everyday things. A like helps others find the story. And tell me in the comments, after learning how Adidas and Puma were born, does it change how you feel about the logos, or do the shoes still stand on their own?